What's up, everybody? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have an album review for you. Yeah, I know at the end of the Necrodeath one, I said there probably wasn't much else this week because it's January, and slow weeks are kind of a common thing in January. But because we have awesome subscribers, I was tipped off to one that once I heard one track, I was like, yeah, no, I could definitely review this. So today, I am going to go over the latest offering from Onirophagus. I think I said that right. Maybe? I don't know. I've never seen that word before. The album, though, is Revelations from the Void. This comes out also on the 17th of January on Personal Records. This band formed in 2011 in Spain. This is their third album overall, and honestly, the first I have ever heard of this band. I had them confused with another Spanish act that was like more like kind of like bloodbath-ish. I think they're Onirophagus or something like that. I picked up one of their albums when I was down in Florida. I thought that was this band. I was like, hey, you know what? That'd be kind of a cool one to go over. But once I looked them up, I was like, oh no, this is something completely different. So honestly, I was kind of going in blind on this. And I kind of like, relish the chance to like go over a band that I had completely never heard of and really hadn't jammed until today. And once again, this was thanks to a comment from one Ben NG. He brought this one up a couple times in the live stream for the Gourd Embrace review, and also left a comment and was like, you know what, I'll just check this one out. And this is some flat out gnarly death doom. And again, once I heard one track and then of course looked at the awesome artwork by Paolo Girardi, which does kind of look like, Cthulhu's infected butthole, but of course, well done. Like, I love his artwork in general. Yeah, I was very interested, and honestly, this is just some flat out amazing death doom, and death doom that kind of goes across the spectrum of death doom. The opening track, The Hollow Valley, definitely sets the tone. It is a big 10-minute track. There are only 5 tracks on here, and most of them are around like the 7 to 8 minute mark. You have one that is just shy of 6, and then 2 that are over 10 minutes. In fact, the last one is over 15 minutes. But it leads in with lumbering, droning riffs. It's very melancholic. But throughout this album, this band works a really good balance between these just flat out melancholic, dreary, woeful melodies. The kind of stuff you just 100% expect from like My Dying Bride, Shape of Despair, maybe even Hooded Menace to an extent. I'm just now discovering this band and I feel like I'm attending their funeral. That's the vibe. But they balance it out with these big, heavy, lumbering sections that definitely feel more akin to like the heavier side of like Hooded Menace or like the breakdowns you would associate with like Incantation. And there's a great give and take on this album in terms of like those dramatic shifts between styles. They're matched with, again, like the guitars sort of like changing it up, going from like single chord harmonies and just big droning riffs on top of just monotonous slow drums to something that is like a little bit more like on the death metal spectrum in terms of like heavy tremolo harmonies, more cavernous, deep growls. Black Brew in particular, I think, is a really solid song in terms of switching that on and off. The dynamics on that song keep the song very interesting throughout its almost 9-minute runtime. Going from like just downtrodden, like I can't get out of bed because the weight of reality is just suffocating me, to absolutely oppressive, dark, menacing tremolos, like, kind of like Morbid Angel-ish. You even get a good chuggy heavy breakdown in there too, and swells of atmosphere. The atmosphere in here, I mean, it's partially due to the production. There's a lot of reverb on it, but it still sounds very crisp, like you can make out everything on here. But one of the biggest things that kind of makes this like a more atmospheric listen are the vocals. The vocals have a surprising amount of dynamic to them. I was pretty much just expecting like, the cavernous roars that you often associate with death doom, like something more akin to like Mortiferum and again, Hooded Menace. But as the album went on, there's a lot of interesting shifts in terms of like just different vocal approaches. There's a lot of these like kind of tuneful bellows across this album. They're very dramatic. They're very, desperate, pleading, anguished. It sounds like they were recorded at the bottom of a well that's slowly filling up with water and they're about to drown in it. I feel like that's kind of the setting for this. But while a lot of them feel like they're kind of like calling out to the void and pleading with whoever would listen to not take them, there's also some very melodic sections of, I guess you would call it singing. Like it's almost like tuneful chanting. Like there's not just the one vocalist in the band. I think there are definitely others like kind of contributing, and you have these harmonized chants. They show up at the end of the Hollow Valley, which has this beautiful end to it. Lots of atmospheric tremolos, and it kind of takes on almost like a more like atmospheric death metal sort of approach, because it kind of switches over to blast there, which, yeah, this isn't all slow and plotting. It is mostly slow and plotting, but I like the fact that it kind of mixes it up a little bit as far as the rhythms. But those chants have a very tuneful nature to them. The more I listen to this, the more I was surprised at how they utilize melody on this album. It's not all just like the My Dying Bride tropes, the single chords just dragging you down into the grave. There's some real surprises on here. What I wasn't surprised by, of course, was like the more death metal aspects, because this is Death Doom, and you've got like some great tremolo harmonies on here, some big, crushing, punishing riffs. When the song Land Sickness doesn't sound like it is literally pulling dirt on top of it and burying itself in its sorrows, it breaks into some absolutely savage, sinister death metal moments. Again, Black Brew, probably one of my big standouts on here. I really love the change in the melodies on that one too. They open up a little bit more sinister and dark rather than like melancholic. Like it sounds more evil and ominous rather than, you know, just super damn sad. Honestly, the more I listen to this, the more I wish John was here, because some of this was so sad, I would probably get a chance to reference John's favorite scene in Neverending Story once again. So I'm just left with hoping that he actually watches this review, sees that I put up that GIF again, and has himself a little bit of a cry. And hopefully he's listening to a song like The Tome on here, because that one probably has like the biggest funeral doom vibe on there. Like we're talking full bore, esoteric. Even some of the atmosphere on there is particularly haunting as well. The first half of that song is pure misery. It's slow. It is so downtrodden. It's a flat out dirge up until the, you know, kind of hard shift into blast beats and atmospheric tremolos, but it does settle into this really good, like almost kind of like Morbid Angel-ish groove with like, you know, some lower, deeper tremolos. The harmonies shift from more atmospheric to more sinister once again. Possibly the biggest surprise on here in terms of like what I expected, and in terms of, again, like use of melody on here, were the brighter moments on here, the more triumphant, soaring moments. Totally was not expecting that. That's never on my Death Doom bingo card when I get into Death Doom. I don't expect anything to lift me up. I expect it to all drag me down. But I have to admit, at the end of Black Brew, there are some triumphant, soaring melodies. Like they're scaling up rather than scaling down, and they really work. It's like this kind of like glimmer of hope. Like, I'm not sure what was in that Black Brew. I mean, it's kind of slow and lethargic for a good chunk of that song, so I assume it was probably decaf. But that song has a lot of really interesting transitions in it, and I think it showcases some of the strongest songwriting. And again, kind of taking a bit of a chance bringing in something, you know, less melancholic. Like, again, that end does not feel sad at all. It feels like it is actually reaching for the light. And the last track, the 15-minute monster, Stargazing into the Void, that one has some flat out like almost like strummed rock riffs. It kind of shows up about like the last quarter of the song, and you know, before that you're going through absolute melancholy and misery, and then, you know, bludgeoning death metal sections. Lots of killer transitions in there, and great use of violin as well. They have a guest session player doing violin, which they really make good use of her for the atmosphere. I mean, this band really didn't need a lot of extra help to make this album sound sad, forlorn, woeful, oppressive. Choose your appropriate dark, somber adjective. It's that. They really didn't need the extra help. But with that extra violin on top, you know, just kind of putting out these just absolutely dreary melodies, it really just kind of drives this home. And by home, I mean funeral home. I really love the clean bridge on that song in particular, because the violin really just kind of like takes the lead and just drives home these amazing melodies. But the hard switch from that to like, honestly, some of the heaviest riffs in the album, I thought was just a really cool dynamic overall. But after you get past those like big heavy sections, you get this, again, like kind of like soaring rock section with heavy strummed melodies, the cleanest vocals that are on the album too. And again, they're more soaring. Like they still have that chanty sort of refrain to them, but it definitely feels like they're going for a far more melodic hook on there. How they transition out of that too, I thought was really cool, because you can definitely tell on that part they're playing some brighter major chords, and then they kind of just shift down to, the minor chords that are adjacent to that melody and throw like a stomping blast over it, and it just completely changes the nature of the song, even though they're essentially playing the same melody, which I always like that. Those like fun key changes like that are just really cool. But the violin is also utilized on Black Brew as well, though very differently, since that song is way more like ominous and menacing. They're kind of doing like this more like skittering, kind of like wild, devilish sound with the violin, and absolutely complements the atmosphere. I think there's also some backup vocals to that one too. There's occasionally like an atmospheric hum in the background of some of these songs, like I heard it on Land Sickness in particular. And I can't tell if it's like a droning synth or their backup vocals. Either way, very effective. It kind of just adds another layer to this borderline like impenetrable sound. Like this is just dark and melancholic, and again, the thing that I really like about this is it's kind of like all-encompassing as far as like death doom. Like this captures that Peaceville sound. So yeah, the My Dying Bride stuff, if you're a big fan of like Mother of Graves too, like this definitely has that too. But it also has like the more oppressive, dreary, and just kind of dark and heavy sound that you would get with like a lot of Finnish death doom bands as well. I'll also say that none of this really dragged, which, I mean, they're long, drawn-out songs, and there's definitely the potential for that. Like, I love Funeral Doom and Death Doom, but sometimes it can get, a little bit monotonous at times, and not like the good kind where they're just laboring on like a really sick section, like, oh my God, just kind of move on or add something to that moment. This is really well paced. The transitions kind of show up when I feel like they need to, and there's enough going on in the music where I feel like they're actually like, building on them and kind of adding layers to it. And again, all the use of like songwriting dynamics with like interesting vocal changes, the violin, the switching from like, more somber melodies to more ominous melodies. It keeps this album interesting. As for any negatives on here, man, I'd be hard pressed to actually find any. Like, I love the production. The songwriting, I think, is excellent. While I could say it is like an amalgamation of a lot of bands I love, I mean, I could also say it's an amalgamation of a lot of bands I love. That's really not a complaint at all. And they do all of these different styles of death doom really well. So overall, I'm going to give this 4 stars. I'm bordering on a 4.5 on this one, and I think with more listens, it might turn into that. I ordered this about halfway through listening to it and was like, okay, yeah, I need more time with this, and I'm probably going to end up getting more of this band stuff because this was just a really solid listen. It is dark, it is somber. Like, if you are already depressed as hell, don't put this album on. But if you're just a big fan of death doom, and again, like kind of all kinds of death doom, like if you just like the heavy, more ominous sound of like a crushing incantation breakdown or early Hooded Menace, it's here. But also if you like the more melancholic sound of like My Dying Bride, Paradise Lost, and all that stuff too, it is also here too. This is well paced, especially considering the length of these songs too. Yeah, this is just really well done. So yeah, if you're a fan of, I mean, like literally any of the bands that I have brought up, check this out. And thank you, Ben, for putting this on my radar. Otherwise, I probably would have I might have picked it up eventually. I don't know, because I mean, I'm generally drawn to Paolo Girardi's artwork, and I give most bands a chance that, have him do their artwork. But there's a good chance I might have just missed this entirely. So thank you, Ben, and to everyone else, check this out. It's nasty. So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships. They are only 99 cents, and we do a members-only live stream every now and then. That is our lone perk at the moment, and we're going to try to get one together for this month. We're just going to figure out a time to do it, and still, not sure whether or not we're going to have like a theme to it or just do like a fun hangout, and you guys can just ask us whatever questions, or we'll ask you questions. I don't know. Kind of wide open on those live streams. Anyway, this is the new way to support the channel if you'd like. We also still have our store, thrallsmetal.com, with our t-shirts and hats. That is linked down below in the video description. And again, if you would like to join and become a member of this channel and brag to your friends for whatever reason, I don't know if you'd want to brag about this, but you could, theoretically, but you'd have to hit the join button to really do that. And of course, thank you for all the support you guys have given us over the years, the likes, the comments, the shares, the kind of everything. You guys are absolutely amazing. I mean, hitting 20,000 subscribers was a thing that I never thought we would get to, and here we are, and it still blows me away. And yeah, we got a ton of content planned for you this year. Again, January is kind of slow for new releases, so we're working on some other stuff just to keep it interesting this month. Either way, we're looking forward to once again overloading you guys with more content. So one more big thank you because you guys are awesome, and we will catch you later.